Welcome to Connecting Greatness, a series of conversations with entrepreneurial minds. I'm Randy Thomas, and today I'm sitting down with John Panigas. Did I say that right again? Did I pronounce that correct for you, John?
Did that well.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. John is a business coach, and today we're going to talk a little bit about what he does, and more importantly, how he does it. So, John, welcome to Connecting Greatness.
Thanks, Randy.
So tell me, John, entrepreneurship, how did it all start for you?
30 plus years ago, I left a job with a multinational and decided that I was going to join the family business. And 30 years later, here I am. We were in the business of retail construction. When I started with the business, we were barely making a paycheck. And when I left and sold my share of the business, we had created a $140 million organization.
Do you work now because you want to or because you need to?
Because I want to.
Fantastic. So that's a great luxury, isn't it?
Yes, yes it is. I think that there is a difference between a true entrepreneur and one who thinks he or she is an entrepreneur. The entrepreneur knows they have to do whatever it takes. And very rarely do we think about it, we just do it. Those that think they are entrepreneurs take a little bit of time deciding whether they should or they shouldn't. So I think it's inherent in those of us that have been business owners that we know what to do when we do it. And sometimes we're not right. You know, I tell people that entrepreneurs usually have to do things twice before they get it right the first time.
That's interesting. So this must have been interesting for you, having worked in 3-generation families, business, to see what the key lessons were and how business has evolved. And what I'm going to ask you is, how do you think what is one of the key areas that business has evolved the most in, from the time when you started with your dad through to when you've been working with your son to now when you're coaching?
So we don't have a couple hours, right? We don't have a few minutes to talk about this.
Well, I'm enjoying the conversation. So
there are, you know what? It's never going to change as far as I'm concerned. It's still about relationships and how you connect with the person you're talking to.
Right.
I feel for entrepreneurs and business people today. I feel for them because they have challenges that I never had to deal with. So what are those challenges?
Yeah.
You have the XY generations now working with the boomers. The millennials are right behind them. And if you think X and Y are challenging, try the millennials. I have one. One of my kids is a millennial. Entitled doesn't even begin to start to describe how they feel about life. They're very vocal in the fact that their boomer parents have destroyed this planet, and it's going to be up to them to fix it. We also have a situation where we have a melting pot in the city. So you have all these cultures coming together. So put different age groups, different cultures together. As a leader nowadays, if you're not spending 80-90% of your time having conversations, you're going to fail, because you need to know what's going on, and your staff needs to know that you care what they have to say, because they're very, very, very opinionated these days.
I think leaders are more vulnerable now.
Oh, absolutely. When my father ran a business, it was very autocratic and it was very dictatorial. You did as you were told. If you didn't, there's the door. And it was very simple. We didn't have government regulations. We didn't have penalties for any of that stuff. You just did as you were told. So employees lived in a certain environment of fear. When our generation, the boomers, came to work, we still had a certain amount of that, but we also figured out that, you know what, this is not the way to treat people. So we started to spend more time thinking about what we thought they wanted and giving it to them. We became more tolerant of different cultures. Women working in the workplace, women having responsibility, were some of the things that we did as a generation. We pretended to listen to what people have to say. We still had our own way of doing things. Let's not fool ourselves, okay?
Right.
I was no different. But as soon as X and Y came into the picture, things changed dramatically, because all of a sudden they said, if they asked a question, you didn't give them you didn't give them the answer they were looking for, they would tell you. That's the difference. My generation, for an example, performance reviews. My generation stressed the day they were getting their performance review. X and Y want to know when it's going to be, what time it's going to be, and when you give it to them, they're going to give you, they're not just going to listen to you. They're also going to give you all sorts of comments on what they think, how well you're doing your job. So, yeah, we're talking about some major clashes now when you have these, because there are still people out there running companies that are in their 60s and 70s. My generation is probably the majority of leadership right now, but the ones coming up below us are coming up fast. I mean, you have 17, 18, 19-year-olds owning companies now. They're not delivering newspapers anymore. Okay,
right.
They're owning companies. So they are a lot more aggressive.
If I rewind this a second, we preach, we always say to entrepreneurs, be fearless, be brave. And then you're talking about how the generations are different. And do we classify that as fearless, or is it a bit of a lack of respect?
No, I think it's fearless. I don't think they are unrespectful, because they grew up with parents who were very respectful. I look at my kids, and the reason I think our generation calls it disrespectful is because they're not afraid to say why. If you say something to them and you expect them to do it, they're going to say, why do I have to do this? Now think about it. Is that really an unfair request? As a parent, probably, because you hear why 10,000 times a day. But in business, I don't know that it's unfair. You know what? If you want me to do something, explain to me why I need to do this. And doesn't that make sense? Really, what does it take? It takes an extra 2 or 3 seconds to explain it. And the end result is you have an employee that now clearly understands why they're doing what they're doing.
Fantastic. What I would like to do, I'd like to take this segue, and we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, I'd like to talk to you about coaching. Because coaching, again, from what you've learned through your lifetime growing up in business and being an entrepreneur, it's very interesting that I'm assuming that your clients are people who are, some of them be your age, some of them might be older, some of them might be younger, and I'm very interested to hear about what your approach is to dealing with today's entrepreneur.
Okay.
We'll be right back on Connecting Greatness with Mr. John Panigas. Hi, welcome back to Connecting Greatness. I'm Randy Thomas. I'm sitting down with Mr. John Panigas, business coach. And John, welcome back.
Thank you.
I want to ask you off the top, business coach for corporate leaders or primarily entrepreneurs?
I prefer entrepreneurs.
Why is that?
I suppose for a couple of reasons. Number one, I have been one for the better part of 30 years. The other part of it is that entrepreneurs, because they are where the buck stops, when it comes to making decisions, changing course, they can do it relatively quickly. They don't have to go through layers of bureaucracy to get there.
So are we talking more small business here?
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Okay. As a coach, do you prefer to work with a certain sector of business?
As a coach, I look at the individual.
Okay.
It doesn't really concern me too much what type of business they're in. It doesn't concern me all that much what their revenue is. Small business is where I like to play because they're the ones that need the most help.
Right.
Okay. They're also the ones that tend to be a little more honest with me. Part of business coaching is trust. It's the most important part of what I do. If the person I'm working with doesn't trust me, we might as well not be, we're wasting our time, and we're wasting that client's money. Without trust, we can't get anything done.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to ask you a couple of short questions here.
Sure.
First of all, what do you do?
I guide my clients.
What makes you unique?
I've been there. I have enough bruises on my backside from the different things that I've done in my life that helps me identify issues relatively quickly.
So, John, let me ask you, why do you do what you do?
I believe that all entrepreneurs deserve success. It's real simple for me. They live in a very high risk, high stress world. Most of the time, everything they own is on the line.
Right.
And they deserve to be successful. 80% of the business community in this country is small business. They drive the economy, and we are the most abused and harangued sector of the business community. And so that's my mission. My mission is to help them to be successful.
Fantastic. Let's talk about you as a business coach.
Right.
Your approach, day one, new customer. Like I'm sure that you must have a
process.
Yeah, process. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Day one. I mean, even prior to them becoming a customer, I think it's important to find out whether they can be a customer, whether they are going to be able to be open and honest with me. So I take them through a process where they have a bit of a taste of what I do with them, and it's because in order to become my client, you have to be invited. Okay, you can, I have refused checks because I just didn't think I could do anything for certain people. So I spend a good hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, coaching them, no charge, just to see what their reaction is. And I tell them right up front, look, when I'm finished with you, you will get value. And once we're done, we're going to decide whether we can work together. So that's the first step.
That's your first step. Okay.
Exactly.
Fair enough. Step two.
If it feels right, step two is the very first meeting. And what I do is, it's a bit of housekeeping, but I give them what's called an effectiveness rating. And I ask them to tell me where they need help. So I have a list of 26 functional areas in a business. Rate them A, B, and C as to how you feel, how comfortable you feel about it.
It's like a checklist that you're going to hand them and say, sit down and do your
So that
homework?
gives me a baseline of where to start with them. I spend 50% of my time cheering what my clients do well.
Is that, okay, because you just answered my question, because I was going to ask you, a cheerleader or a butt kicker?
Right. Accountability is a huge part of my job as well. It really is. Because as I said earlier, the level of discipline in the entrepreneurial mind is minute. I'm there to make sure they do what they claim they're going to do. The nice part of the clients that I have is we also have a group. We meet as a group. And then you have group accountability, which is a lot stronger than my accountability, believe me.
That must be an interesting dynamic.
Oh, it's the most fun I have all month.
Is that like phase 3 or something? Is that a different phase?
Yeah, it is, or it's part of a, I offer 4 products, okay? One is one-to-one coaching. Mm-hmm. Number 2 is coaching for the leader and the organization. So there's different levels that are dealt with. Number 3 is coaching and a group dynamic through an organization that I work with, okay? And number 4 is strategic planning in a very unique way that I've developed. It's not something you see every single day.
Okay, so you have a process, the first step, the second step of the self-evaluation.
Yes.
And then we were talking about, you holding them accountable for what they said they were going to do. Is there another phase of this process that...
Yeah, I develop a fairly loose curriculum for them in terms of what they need to bump up their knowledge, the type of knowledge they need to run a business.
Have you ever, as a consultant, walked in to somebody and had to tell them that they're upside down and get out?
Yes, I have.
That must have been hard as an entrepreneur, or did you? How did you feel to have to give that news? Like, did you almost feel it wasn't right for me to make this decision, or this is what they're paying me to do?
No, this is what they're paying me for. That's the toughest thing we have to do in our business, is deliver bad news. Because a lot of the times the client doesn't know it, or doesn't realize it, or doesn't realize the impact of it, because they're going happily along. Right. Everything's fine. I have the opportunity.
That's catastrophic news, by the way. That's just not bad news.
Yeah, no. We've had several almost catastrophic situations. Luckily, knock on wood, we've been able to pull it out of the fire. So it hasn't been terrible. Great lessons learned, but it's part of my job. I can't just be Mr. Rosie, Mr. Cheerleader all the time. There are times where I have to say, give your head a shake. This is what's happening. What are you going to do about it? A lot of times, they know they have to do it, but they're afraid to do it. Like firing an employee. Most entrepreneurs would rather die than to fire somebody because they hate it. They're taking away their livelihood. They're taking away everything these people have.
And they understand what that is, because would you say it's because they take it personally as their failure?
Partially, yeah. And I think at the end of the day, it's also just unfounded fear. Because if you take a look at it from the other side, which is how is this person affecting the rest of the organization? And my simple question is, what would your business look like if they weren't there? That's where I always start. And they can go on for half an hour. Once you open the door, and then by the time we're done, they've realized it.
Right.
But it still takes sometimes 2 or 3 months before they'll do it. And then when they do it, it's like the 10,000-pound gorilla has been lifted off their shoulders.
Sure.
And oh my God, I wish I'd done this, when you told me 3 months ago.
What is one of the key signs, like in your opinion, when is the first sign that you're probably gonna have to pull the trigger?
When you run out of cash.
Well, okay, that's pretty simple.
There's nothing else.
Right.
You run out of cash, you're done.
Okay, fair. But when you invest in a business for someone like yourself who'd been successful, how do you draw the line and say, I'm only putting this X dollars into this company, and if that's gone, I am not reinvesting?
That's right.
Really? Do you hold yourself true to that no matter what?
Absolutely. I have in most cases, and in the one that I didn't, it made it worse. It really did.
Wow.
It just, it postpones the inevitable, is what it does. And you have to, there needs to be a certain amount of discipline. Unfortunately, entrepreneurs in general don't have a whole lot of discipline.
But isn't that what makes them great?
Well, that's just it.
So it's kind of like...
You have to have it. You have to have you have to be able to course correct immediately. Most of us don't think about it, we just do it. It's innate, right. It's really in us. Can you learn to be an entrepreneur? I don't think so. I think it's part of who you are. I've seen too many try it because they thought it was quite glamorous to own your own business. And then things get tough and you've got to go home and tell the wife or husband that we may have to put the house up as security to bolster our credit line. That's when you can see that maybe they're not ready for it.
Right.
Some people are just built for this. You have to have an enormous amount of patience, and you have to be, you have to understand that there's risk involved here. That's the big one.
Right.
Okay, there's a ton of risk involved, and sometimes we just wait a little bit too long. We just wait it out too long.
We're going to take a quick break.
Sure.
We're going to come back. I'd like to talk about the evolution of technology in the business that you've worked with and how it affects today. Yep. We'll be right back on Connecting Greatness I'm Randy Thomas, sitting with Mr. John Panigas. See you in a moment. Hi, welcome back to Connecting Greatness, Conversations with Entrepreneurial Minds. I'm Randy Thomas. I'm sitting down with Mr. John Panigas. John, welcome back.
Thank you.
We're going to talk a little bit about technology now. Now, you've got a vast experience in business, both as an entrepreneur and now as a coach. Do you think businesses nowadays appreciate it enough? Like, everybody's got a computer.
Yep.
But, if I wait 5 seconds here, 5 seconds there, but do most entrepreneurs understand what they're losing?
No, they don't have a clue, and the reason they don't have a clue is they're afraid of it because they don't understand it. And that's really what it's all about, is understanding what it can do for you. As soon as social media became important, everybody jumped on the bandwagon, started Twittering and started going on LinkedIn and all the other things that were out there. But there was really no plan, there was really no reason for doing it other than everybody was doing it.
Right.
Most business owners nowadays defer anything that comes that has to do with IT. They'll defer to somebody else because they're afraid of it.
What about yourself when you walk into a company and you assess what's going on?
Yes.
Is part of this IT as well? And
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
absolutely.
What is it? How does that process work for you? Like, do you have
it depends.
a stable of references, or how does that work for you?
No, prior to doing this business, I was prior to being a business coach, I was probably as enlightened as most people were, which is not very. Part of this process has had me interact with folks like the PCDoc, where I have been able to gain more of an appreciation for it. PCDoc is an IT consulting company.
Oh, the auditing company.
The auditing company.
The
exactly.
auditors. Okay. Oh, right. Yes. The auditors for small business.
So I got a pretty good sense of how important it was. And one of my clients, we were doing we were in a seminar, and he drew he made a drawing of a business that starts off as a really cute-looking little house. We were talking about the IT function, and then he kept making little additions to the house as time went on. Most of the additions were a little off kilter, not quite straight, because most businesses deal with their IT function from a Band-Aid standpoint. They need something, so they go out and buy it.
Right.
If there's a new piece of technology, they'll go out and buy it, they'll install it and learn it themselves, which means they're going to know about 10% of what it can actually do for them.
Right.
And so it's one of those things, and in my experience, I'm still not sure why. It's probably one of the most powerful tools in a business, but probably one of the most misused tools in a business.
You're talking with the IT infrastructure.
Exactly.
And so is that something that you find is wrong with most of the businesses you work with?
Without exception. Without exception.
And how do you rank it on importance then? It sounds to me like you're saying it's quite important.
Yeah, it's in the top 3 or 4, I would think. Right after people, customers, money, then I think should come.
Well, it kind of gets all connected with
it does. Well, it is the
IT.
connector, isn't it? It's the connector to customers, it's the connector to people, it's the connector to everybody.
Right.
It's also what creates efficiency, and that's something that all business owners should be looking for. But a lot of them just don't pay close enough attention to it.
So it sounds like to me what you're saying is that you'd recommend for small businesses to consider that as one of their priorities as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I've taken every one of my clients through an exercise of at least trying to realize what they've got. Imagine an organization that where most of the employees are remote and nobody has a laptop.
Right.
It's a lot of that going on out there. There really is. They just don't understand it. The proper use of a smartphone. I'm just starting now to understand how powerful my iPhone is.
Right. Businesses they don't have their technology synced.
No.
And then with their ambitious goals.
That's right.
Listen,
IT should be part of your strategy, because you're not going to move forward, especially in today's day and age, unless you have a competent, well thought out IT strategy. Without it, you're going to be left behind eventually. Okay. We're not using pencils anymore. We're not using pens anymore. Those that are still doing it, they're going to have some problems.
It's not just about selling, it's about setting up the foundation of this house.
Yeah, and saying to themselves, what's the cost of me doing nothing? What if it crashes? That's when, unfortunately, that's when they usually react, when it's crashed or when it breaks. Then they'll bring people in just to fix it. They don't quite work out the solution.
Right.
Just give me a few Band-Aids because I have to get back to work as quickly as I possibly can. Right. And I think that's what's hurting a lot of business nowadays.
Fantastic.
And you take a look at it, it's become so user-friendly. Look, you know what, I'm 54 years old, okay? I didn't grow up with this stuff, but I know well enough that if I don't use it, and if I don't take advantage of the power of it, I can't do my job properly.
Right.
It's really what it comes down to.
Fantastic. John, how do people get a hold of you?
They can get a hold of me at jpanigas@bell.net, johnpanigas@gmail.com.
And your website?
And my website is johnpanigas.com.
There we go. That's easy. That's
Yes.
easy. John, I want to thank you for being here today. It's been a fantastic conversation, and hopefully we'll get to have you come back.
Sure.
And I'd like to hear more about
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
John, thank you very much. And thank you for watching Connecting Greatness. I'm Randy Thomas. I've been sitting with Mr. John Panigas, and we will see you next time.